Hello everyone. If you can't hear me, I'm sure you'll tell me. It's good to be back. I've been taking a break lately because I had a cold and I didn't want to stress my voice. Hopefully you can't hear it. I'm pretty much over it. And I'm starting back in on Frontiers today. I'm going to be working some more on Behemoth and getting that a little bit farther. I got my chat window set up here. I'm not going to have it open all the time, so if I miss your questions, just hang out and I'll answer them periodically. Okay, so today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating the detonator that Gosgen was supposed to give you so that you could set off the bombs and blow up the dam. And what I did before the stream was I just created a little detonator model. Um, in this game, whenever I've got sort of a machine or something that needs to be kind of creatively consistent, I sort of mash up this telescope model that was the first large machine that we used in the game. So that was this. And so when I needed a crystal cutter, I just chopped it up and turned it into this. Because even though we don't have like a really strong art style in this game, I wanted at least, the man-made mechanical things to look consistent. So now that we've got a crystal cutter, or not a crystal cutter, a crystal detonator, I've done the same thing. I just used a couple pieces from the telescope. It's not pretty, but not a lot in this game is. So that model is ready to go, and I'm going to fire up Unity 4.7, our favorite 32-bit editor, and we're going to create a new world item, which is something I haven't done in a long time. I am over my man cold. It was a nasty man cold. Obviously, none of you know me personally, but anyone who does know me personally knows I hate colds. I've gone on record saying I'd rather have a broken arm than a cold, and that's not a joke. I would rather break my arm and deal with that pain and have it in a sling than have a cold for a week. I really just dislike it. And so when I run into people at the store or something who are just hacking and coughing just openly and not even trying to look like they're sneezing into their arm or anything, it makes me so angry. And that's what happened this time. I went out to the store and there were 3 or 4 people who were sick. Who knows which one of them gave it to me, but a couple days later, boom. Okay. So first I have to decide where I'm going to put this crystal cutter. Frontiers organizes world items into packs, which is just like groupings of sort of items with broad commonalities. Books, camping gear, carts and carriages, clothing, and these packs were created just sort of organically. As I found one pack was getting a little large or a little bit confusing, I'd break it off into different packs. And packs are organized by folder, but they're also organized in the World Items Manager. Let's see, World Item Packs. A pack contains all the prefabs all the prefabs that you find in this folder. It also contains links to the actual World Items script. And it has a couple of lookup tables that aren't visible in the editor that make it easier to find world items at runtime very quickly. So right now I need to decide where Gosgen's crystal detonator is going to go, and because I have no plans to make these generally available, it's just going to be a one-off. I'm going to put it in the quest items pack, which is a place where I put things that only appear once and really never again. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate one of these prefabs and name it Gaussian Crystal Detonator. All right, and then I'll edit it here. So it's going to be a world item. We know that. It's not going to be a Kara's note. We're going to remove that script. We don't know what kind of collider it's going to have yet. And it's not going to use these models. It's going to use Crystal Detonator and Telescope. I'm going to duplicate this material. And I'm going to put it in the quest items materials folder, and we're going to use that instead, just so there's zero confusion. Okay, now why we have a sub-object here. I'm going to delete that. We are not going to be rotated 90 degrees. We're going to stick straight up. There we go. Okay, and we're going to be scaled to 1, 1, 1, not 11, 1. And finally, we're actually going to have two materials on this. And the second material, I'm going to duplicate from a crystal object that we have. Luminite. Now, I could just use the same material twice. And in a lot of cases, that's the most efficient thing to do in terms of rendering. But because this is a one-off item and I don't really have to worry about it, I'm just going to keep it simple and keep the materials I'm using for the item in the pack that the item belongs to. So there's, not too much spaghetti. Now this should, I'm going to redo the UV mapping on this because this is really tiny. Is it even in there? Yeah, that's really tiny, and I'm going to make it bigger so that it picks up more of the crystal detail. Again, obviously the goal of this is not to make it beautiful. Frontiers is not meant to be a super de-duper detailed graphical experience. Most of the graphics effort is put into the terrains, not into objects. Okay, so that's good, but we're bumping into a part of the texture we don't want. Let's do this. Heart Unity. Unity is pretty good. I'm using an old version of it in this game, so I tend to get a little frustrated with it. But on the whole, yes, it's a good tool. It's a very good tool, especially if you use it the way it was intended to be used. You know what? I'm actually gonna break this up. I'm just gonna flip these around so that we get sort of different orientations and angles on the crystals. And make it just slightly more interesting. Where are we bumping into that ugly gray material here? Oh, at the very bottom. Okay, oops. Just launched After Effects. Okay. There, enough polishing this turd. It looks fine. Okay. So now we need to define what this is. Okay, it's in the pack name, quest items. Its name is going to be Gaussian Crystal Detonator. And what I'm doing right now is the world item script has a bunch of serialized properties. In the WI props class. And you got a couple different sets of sub-properties in there. You got the name, which is everything you need to duplicate it, display it, and save and load it. And then if it has anything to do with quests, it has a quest name that you can use to quickly look it up. So that's all contained in the name class. And then there's local properties, which is stuff that can be different for each instance of the world item. So if an object was crafted by the player as opposed to like a default version of the object, which wouldn't be, these local properties can be saved and loaded when the object is created and destroyed. So it doesn't lose that information. And then it has global properties which don't change between instances. So that's what I'm changing right now. Is I'm going through the name, the local properties, and the global properties to make sure that all the settings for this thing are going to make sense. So the display name is going to be Crystal Detonator. Stack name is what it's called when it's in a stack in your inventory. It has to be unique. 99% of the time, it's just a duplicate of the prefab name. And file name is what it's saved and loaded as. Occasionally, it can be helpful to specify a different file name than the stack name or the pack name or the prefab name, but it's not done very often. And last but not least, the quest name. I'm going to set that as Gaussian Crystal Detonator for now. I'm going to turn off auto increment file name because there's only ever going to be one of these things. So that's not necessary. And that can make it easier to look it up if I find that I need to later, because I don't have to account for, -0, -1, -2 in the name. Okay, mode. It starts as frozen, freeze and startup, that's fine. It's not crafted by player. Active radius. The active radius and the visible radius. These are two properties that define how far away you can get from the object before it shuts off its colliders and freezes in place. That's the active radius. And either turns off its renderer or is unloaded. That would be the visible radius. So 5 and 50 are the default values, and that's pretty good. Use as container and inventory. No, it does not contain anything. It's not stolen. It has no subcategory. Does it emit a light? Well, that's an interesting question. I suppose it could. When you want a world item to emit a light, for instance, lantern, you can specify a light template name. And somewhere, object managers, light manager. We have these templates: campfire light, raw dark luminite, raw light luminite, la di da di da. I think I'm going to put down raw light luminite, and we'll make it glow with a little crystal. That'll be kind of cool. Raw light luminite. And a light offset, let's see. That specifies where, because it creates a light and it parents it under the child object, and so you have to specify where exactly the light's going to be. So it's at about 0.35 Y. Cause of destruction, nothing. Display namer script, stack namer script, those are custom naming scripts, HUD target script. Remove item skills, no skills are required to remove this item. Base currency value. I'm gonna say it's worth 1. I might change that later, but for now it's a one-off item. No one in this world is gonna know what to make of it exactly. It has unrefined luminite at the top, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave that alone. Okay. So global, parent under group, yes. Flags. I'm not gonna set any flags because I'll set the size to small and the base rarity to rare, or no, exclusive. That means there's just one. But I'm not going to set any wealth, alignment, occupation, region. I'm not going to set any of those flags because, again, I don't have to spawn this thing in a structure, and flags are what is used to determine whether something spawns in a structure or not, or appears in an inventory, and that's not necessary in this case. Examine info. Override description name. We don't need to do that. Static examination message. This is really Ryan's job, but a remote detonator. I'll probably misspell something. Detonator. Fueled by luminite. Okay, and it doesn't take any skills to examine that, so that's fine. Base rotation, nothing. Pivot offset, nothing, nothing. It's light. It's made out of, we'll say metal. We'll say metal. Currency type, none. Use rigid body, yes. It doesn't need to cast shadows. It is dynamic, so if you throw it, it'll, drop. And parent collider type is going to be a box. And the file name base, this is for when you increment the file name, but I'll just put that in there just so there's no confusion. Okay, renderers. We have one renderer, a mesh renderer that's on the base object. It's already in there. Colliders. We have one collider. It's a box collider. Okay, good. Okay, and we don't have any of those defined because we haven't added any scripts yet. Okay, I'm going to apply that. Oh, I don't need that sub game object. Okay, so we've done the basic work for setting up our crystal detonator world item. Now, if I go into the world items manager and I refresh, do we have any errors? We might. No, nothing important. Okay, if I refresh the World Items Manager, what that does is it uses Unity's asset database. It goes through all these folders and it updates the packs. And you see this is in bold. That means that it's gone through and it's changed this pack. And yes, it has. Gaussian crystal detonator is now included in the prefab list. Which means if we query that at runtime, we'll be able to spawn it and stuff. So that's the basics for setting up a world item. Now we have to actually make it do stuff. Do stuff beyond just be spawnable and, can like drop and fall around the world and things. Okay. So what we need this thing to do is we needed to change a mission variable. In the last stream, you saw me set up all of those detonators inside the dam, right? In fact, I might as well I'll load that up right now. We can refresh our memories. All right, here we go. Loading, exploding dam charges placed. So this should put us right outside the dam with all the detonators in place. I will set off that I'll set off that explosion again. Let me look up the mission script so I edit the right mission script. Engineer trigger fuse is the mission variable that I want to change. So I'll do that manually first. We'll refresh our memory as to what we're trying to accomplish, and then we're going to create a new world item script to do the same thing with the detonator. Okay. So mission, okay, before I do this, just for the benefit of anyone who doesn't know what the hell is going on. This is a mission where we're tasked with blowing up this dam. We were given several detonators to do it with. You can see we've placed them here in this save game. And what we're supposed to be able to do is go outside and then use a crystal detonator that the character who gave us the bombs was supposed to supply us with to remotely trigger it, which will cause an explosion. Mission variable behemoth. What was it? Engineered fuse. All right, if we set this mission variable to 1, that will tell the bombs that they're supposed to explode, which will tell the structure that it's supposed to set itself to destroyed mode. If I recall, it doesn't look as impressive as I'd hoped it would, but it does function. Now, what could go wrong? It went fine the last time, but we have saved and loaded since then. So there's a chance something might not have saved in the right state or something. I think it'll be okay though. Whoa. Okay. Alright, so that did work. Oh, last time we discovered, this is coming back to me now. Last time we discovered that the dam, although it did set itself to exploded mode, it didn't disable its exterior colliders. So you can see that if I wanted to, I could walk across the surface of this still. So that's something that we'll have to figure out. But the explosion does work, and what we need to do is make the crystal detonator do exactly what I just did with the console. Hopefully everyone's following this. Uh-oh, careful plant. Yeah. Steve managed to get in touch with the distribution company and ask them to turn all that off. So what happened was my earlier dev streams were getting flagged as having copyrighted material because the music from the game was in them. So that was frustrating. And we were confused about why this is happening. Eventually I got in touch with Steve, who was the composer, and he found out that the company that distributed the music, well, he didn't find out, he knew, he just didn't understand what it entailed. He'd opted into this system that would automatically identify copies of it on YouTube or whatever. He didn't realize that this was not going to be an invisible process. He thought it was just going to be totally unobtrusive and harmless. But what it does is it puts a copyright claim on your video. And once he found out about that, he was mortified. And so he quickly got in touch with them, and they've removed it. So if anyone, who has been doing any Let's Plays or or anything like that of this game has had trouble, the trouble should be gone now, and we both feel really bad about it. So hopefully this dev stream should go up onto YouTube without any claims being made. Okay. So Gaussian crystal detonator. Since there's only one of these, and since it only has to do one job, I'm not going to worry about it being generic. I'm not going to worry about it, being able to remotely trigger any set of bombs with these detonators. I'm just going to make it trigger that mission script, and that'll be the end of it. Okay, so I'm going to go into my scripts here, game world item scripts. These are all the scripts that get attached to world items to make them do stuff. They're basically just like mono behavior scripts. They're just a little bit more, they're extended, and they have load and save capabilities, and they can talk to each other really quickly without having to use get component. So we've got stuff like listener and hostile and guard, food stuff. These are all the base scripts. And then in these other folders, I've just sort of broken out things that they're not considered base. They're not the absolute basic stuff you need to make the game function. They sort of extend things. Machines. I'm going to put it in miss. Okay. We're going to call it Gaussian remote. And we're going to call it Gaussian crystal detonator. Okay. Let's crack you open. Now I'll open up another world item script so you can sort of get an idea of how this works. Namespace has got to be world item scripts. And the most important couple of functions and properties that world item scripts inherit is they inherit a state, and they inherit initialization functions, which ensure that the state is loaded and saved correctly at runtime. So the way the state function works, or not the state function, the state object, the way loading and saving works is in the world item script, we use reflection to determine if we have a save state field. And the only requirement for a save state field is that its name is state and that it's serializable. So I can create a class called fuse state, right? And make it serializable, put all of these properties in it, right? Mission name, mission variable name, blah, blah, blah. And in the fuse world item script, if I include that object named state, that's all I have to do for that state to be saved and loaded by the world item script when the object as a whole is saved and loaded. If that makes sense. I don't know if that made sense. I'm sure you'll tell me on chat. Hello, Dr. K. Good to see you. So it took a long time to get to this point, but at this point, just saving and loading the state of a world item as a string is very, very easy. So for Gaussian crystal detonator, Um, let's see, what are we going to need to know about this thing? We're going to need to know if it was triggered or not, because you're only going to want to trigger it once. Is that right? Is that right? What if I trigger it before the bombs are ready? Is that a one-time deal? Yeah, for now we're going to say yeah. So we're going to have a public bool was triggered is false. Okay. And because I don't like, well, I don't like the idea of just defining the mission variable with strings that can't be changed in the editor. But I don't need to save and load that data. So um, I'm going to put some other properties in the actual world item script itself. I'll explain why I'm doing that right now. Where were we? Quest items, prefabs, Gaussian crystal detonator. Okay. Okay. Odds are that the mission name and mission variable name won't change. And if I were to just, you know, say missions get mission behemoth, it would be fine to just put it in there. But every once in a while, it actually does matter. So instead of doing that, Gaussian crystal detonator. Um, oh, forgot to include system. Instead of doing this, I'm going to actually put these as strings in the script, which will let me edit them here. And so this is sort of halfway between um, like load and save data and hard data, because whenever the crystal detonator is instanced in the world, these strings will follow it, right? It'll receive copies of those strings. And so, oh, come on. That enables me to change it in the prefab if something, if say the mission name changes to Behemoth 2 or something, I don't know. That enables me to change that mission name in the prefab without having to change any code. And that change will carry over to every instance of the Gaussian crystal detonator in the world. There's no save data to worry about there, where the wrong mission name is saved in its save state. I don't know what the term. I know the term magic number for when you just have a number that you use, in code, like 5 or whatever. I don't know what the term is for a magic string. I feel like magic string is something else, but I don't like magic strings is what I'm getting at. Okay, now we're recompiling here. Eventually these strings are going to show up in the prefab. There we go. Mission name Behemoth, mission variable name engineer trigger fuse. So if this ever needed to be, engineer trigger fuse blah, I can change it there in the prefab, and that'll carry over to every single instance of it in the world. So that's how I'm handling that. Okay, then we need to add the state. All right, and that's all there is to it. From now on, this object will be saved and loaded at runtime. Um, This might give you the impression that Unity's recompilation, and sort of data safe serialization is very slow. It's not. It's very fast. This game is just really big. Let me check chat. Can anyone here program as good as this guy? Are you asking if anyone in the chat can program as good as me? Odds are good that the answer is yes. I can't program all that well. I mean, I'm proud of some of the things I've done with this system, and I've definitely gotten better working on this project, but I'm not a great programmer. Okay, so there it is. There's our state. Now we need to make it possible to trigger it as a detonator. So we're going to need to use my pop-up menus. In the game, I'm sure at some point you've clicked on an object, assuming you've played it, and a little pop-up menu will show up with options that you can click. And this is something that the world item script provides. And it's also pretty easy to set up. All you have to do is override populate options list. Okay. Oh, yikes, we don't have our collections defined. Okay, so how this works is when you interact with an object by right-clicking on it, the world item scripts, or the world item itself, populate, it's not even defined in this file. The world item calls populate options list, which goes through every world item script on the object and says, okay, tell me what you can do, right? And every world item script can override this function and say, okay, yeah, I'll tell you what I can do. Options, add new world item list option. And a world item list option is just a really simple class that lets you define a button, basically one of those buttons. You can say whether it requires a skill to click or not. You can say what the label name is, all that stuff. So you just add a new one of these, and there are lots of constructors. And in our case, we're just gonna do the super simple one where we pass in some option text because this isn't gonna require a skill or anything. Okay, detonate. That's all there is to it. So now when you right click on it, an option will pop up along with like the default skills like examine and stuff. An option will pop up that says detonate. So now we just have to handle that message if it gets chosen. And the way to do that is I always forget the name. So let's look at a script. There's populate options list on player use world item secondary. Now that sounds a little obtuse. It's not totally clear what that's doing, but there are primary buttons and secondary buttons, and the secondary buttons are the ones that are defined by this list. So when you use the world item with a secondary button, this function gets called and you get sent the result. So the first thing you have to do is cast the result as a world item list result, because I'm using send message here. And then you want to switch what the secondary result is. If it's detonate, See, this was a cow function, so one of the options was tip. If it's default, we don't do anything. If it's detonate, then we want to detonate. Okay. Let's make a private function detonate. Oh, okay. Now, we wanted to make this only detonatable once. So one way we can do that is say if state was triggered, if not state was triggered, then add this list option. Then if it's triggered, this list option just won't even show up. So we're going to call detonate. We'll just put a little check in here. If state was triggered, return. Blah. Let's see. We'll spawn an explosion. Just so we see something. This is a temporary thing. And then we'll set state was triggered to true. Okay, so if we've done everything right, we actually don't need oninitialize to be overridden there. If we've done everything right, we've created a script where if you right click on it, it will populate the option list with detonate if it hasn't been triggered before. And then once you click detonate, it will spawn an explosion and set trigger to true, and then you won't be able to access that list option again. So we are going to try this out right now. Now, have I forgotten anything? Yes, I've forgotten. I need to refresh our world items manager because every time you add a world item script, we better wait for it to finish compiling. Every time you add a world item script, you want to refresh so that all that data is kept in the pack. And then we need to export the database so that that information is saved to disk. Frontiers mods in the world item folder and the mods folder in Frontiers. You've got all of the world item data that I was telling you about, global and local, saved as a default that gets loaded at runtime. And this is so that if modders want to change the default properties of a world item, they can go in here and mess with it instead of having to have this whole, editor setup. Okay, we're going to export our databaser. I've spelled that wrong apparently. No, we need to save templates, not export database. Okay, we've got a null reference exception. What's going on? I keep forgetting to fix this. Pay no mind. It's not an interesting problem. All right, we'll let that compile and refresh and save the templates again. Hello, Merc at 1988. Glad to see you live. And hello, Jay. Legit commenting. I'm assuming you're referring to my blah. It's temporary. I'll change it. If I don't change it by the end of the stream, I owe you $1. How's that? All right. Oh, come on. Oh, it takes so long. All of the other games I work with in Unity, I mean, it's lightning quick. Recompiling is just so quick, but oh man, in this game. Okay, refresh world items manager, save templates. Okay, we don't care about any of that. That's fine. Okay, so now that should have been saved. There, Gaussian crystal detonator. Here's all the local and global information, and then at the very bottom, we should see, yeah, here it is. Okay, now this is XML saved as a string in XML. So it's not superhuman readable. It's superhuman readable. If you're a superhuman, you could read it. But for the rest of us, it's kind of hard to see. However, because this is such a simple object, we can see was triggered pretty clearly, being saved as false inside of the state. So that's there. That's good. Now we're going to spawn, and then I'm just going to manually drop one of these into my inventory. And we'll just have to hope it doesn't crash. I find that the editor tends to crash more regularly when I've been recompiling a lot. Yeah, I am over the cold. It wasn't too bad a cold, really. When they really hit me, it can knock me out for a week. But I think sheer determination made this one short because we had the next world coming out. We have ongoing frontiers. The next world is out, by the way. It's out on Steam. So that got released sort of at the peak of my cold. Um, we have Frontiers work, ongoing always, and then we have Felt Up Circus coming out at the end of this month, basically, and then we have Euclidean being released for Oculus at the end of this month as well. So, you know, having a cold for like a week and a half that really knocks me out just was not an option. It was not an option because there's no one around to pick up my slack. Okay, so we're gonna add an item to our inventory here. Add quest items, Gaussian crystal detonator 1. Okay. It says it added it, and yet we have an error. Oh, we have that's interesting. No reference exception in our fuses that got added to the dam when we loaded the game. Oh, look at that. They don't have the bomb underneath them. That's funny. I'm kind of surprised we didn't notice that. Okay. I'm just going to take care of this real quick while I'm here, because why not? Okay, so it's at line 51. Fuse doppelganger, transform, local position equals bomb, fuse offset. Okay, so the fuse doppelganger is fine because we're seeing it in the world. So it must be the bomb. Bomb equals attached to bomb. If bomb does not equal null, attached to bomb equals true. If attached to bomb. Okay, let's look at you, my friend. What's going on? Here's the fuse. Let's go into debug mode so we can see our bomb is a black powder charge. Yep. So it has the bomb. I mean, it is itself. This is the bomb. Fuse offset? That's just a vector 3. Well, maybe the fuse doppelganger was null? Because this would not get called if the bomb was null. But I feel like I'm looking at the fuse doppelganger right now. Fuse doppelganger. I mean, there it is. It's right there. A doppelganger is a duplicate of an item that doesn't actually have any of its properties, so it looks like the thing, but it isn't the thing. And I found this really helpful. Every time you, I don't know why I pointed at the screen, all of these inventory items that you see, the item that you're holding in your hand is often a doppelganger. It's not the actual item. Um, and then if I'm duplicating one object to appear on top of another object, having the two sort of butting heads and trying to be in their own space can get confusing. So in this case, I just made a doppelganger of the Luminite fuse, which is just the mesh renderer and the material and this very, very long name that helps me determine if it needs to be refreshed. So we're getting a null reference exception at line 51 for our fuses, which is confusing me because the bomb is not null, and the fuse doppelganger is not null. At least not it's not null now that I'm looking at it. All right, I'm sticking a pin in that. Sticking a pin. It's not immediately obvious what's going on, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Now the reason we paused was to check and make sure that I'm spelling this right when I'm trying to add this object to my inventory. World item packs, quest items. I hope you're still getting something out of working on Frontiers for yourself personally, I mean. Guessing interacting with people directly during streams is helping. Yeah, that does help actually. I mean, I am getting something out of it. I think what keeps me going with Frontiers more than anything is the story. Like, I think we came up with a good story. If it was just a roguelike or something, and I didn't feel like there was a cool experience waiting on the end, for people to have fun with, um, I don't think I could keep working on it. But because there is a cool story, the story is done, and I'm just filling in the gaps in the game so that that story can sort of be told in this medium. Even if the game itself isn't all that amazing, people will still be able to play the story and enjoy that part of it. So keeping that in mind helps me keep my enthusiasm up. And I'm also just enthusiastic about finishing things. Uh, the idea of just letting this go is kind of horrible. The idea of putting this in a graveyard and saying, sorry, it'll never be done. I can't handle that psychologically. Okay. Gaussian crystal detonator. So unless I'm add quest items, Gaussian crystal. There, that's better. Detonator. Now you say you added one, but I don't believe you. Let's open up my console. Added one. So it did add one. So what's the problem? Oh, Jesus. What kind of a console is this? Doesn't report errors. Jesus. You never saw this. You never saw this crummy console that doesn't even report errors. I'm going to edit this part of the stream out. So I was adding it, and it was reporting that it tried once, but it really should have been saying, yeah, I couldn't get this out of this pack for some reason. So we'll let that compile, and hopefully the next time I try, it'll tell me something useful. Yeah, there is something there. Um, if it was, okay, say I kickstarted Felt Tip Circus, which is a game that I think is going to be great, but it's not like a story game, it's like a mini game um, for VR. And if I'd kickstarted that and it was my first game and it was way over ambitious and it just went on and on and on, like Frontiers has, that would be really hard to maintain my enthusiasm for, because the only thing waiting at the end of that development process is a game that runs slow. I mean, if we're assuming that the technical problems that plague Frontiers also would plague this alternate history version of Felt Tip Circus, it would run slow. It wouldn't look as nice as I'd hoped. The only thing waiting at the end of that development process is a subpar product that really can't be enjoyed, um, because all of those problems would hold back from the main source of enjoyment. So yeah, I'm grateful that Frontiers at least has elements that don't depend on the technology and don't depend on 120 frames a second in order to be enjoyable for most people anyway. I know some people can't stomach playing at anything less than 90 frames a second. Okay. Add quest items, Gaussian crystal detonator. Couldn't get state data for damageable. No, that's not the same thing. Okay, well, it's not reporting an error. Let's do a search in the world. Gaussian crystal. I mean, it's not in there. What kind of malarkey are you trying to pull here, Frontiers? Am I missing something obvious? I'm spelling it right. It's saying it added it. It's not saying it didn't find it, which is what this would have done. What could I be doing wrong? Okay, I'm going to try and add something else. Add quest items, Kara's note. Okay, I think I'm just doing this wrong. Add pack name, prefab name, number. Okay, let's try adding something else. Let's just make sure that this functionality hasn't completely broken. Let's add some jewelry. Let's add jewelry necklace 1. Aha! Okay, so that worked. Okay. quest items didn't work. Why would that be? Let's see if anyone in the chat has any ideas. Are you missing the pack name? Hello, Actress26. And yeah, that's the quest items. Will I add dragons? No. The closest thing we have to a dragon is a creature called a Leviathan. It's an underwater creature. But otherwise, this isn't high fantasy. It's sort of it's almost sci-fi fantasy. Okay, add. Maybe I'm capitalized. No, quest items is. No, this is peculiar. I'm gonna try another quest item just to see if this is a problem with quest items. All right, Tim Hortons Brew. Add quest items. Tim Hortons Brew. Good old Tim Hortons Brew. No, that works. All right, we're gonna check its name again. Nope. Oh, where the hell is it? We're gonna make sure it has the correct name. Pack name, quest items. Prefab name, Gosgan Crystal Detonator. Stack name, file name, all that stuff is fine. Is it like blowing up or something? I mean, what could it be? I'm not seeing any errors. I'm so confused, guys. I mean, this is going to be a problem because eventually in the conversation, the command that I'm calling right now will be what is used to add it to your inventory when you're talking to Gosgan. So if it's not working here, it's not going to work there either. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, no dragons. You sound so disappointed. Oh my god. Well, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it off and turn it on again. We're gonna apply our changes. We're gonna quit, and then we're gonna start it up again. And by gum, I have a feeling that that's gonna fix it. I feel good about that. Because it's a new world item, can't be in inventory but without a material or something. Well, that's when I typed into the hierarchy window, I was looking for the object, thinking, well, maybe it, maybe it's hidden or something. And when I typed in, crystal detonator or whatever in here, it should have shown up. It would have shown up if it was actually in the world. So, no, it just didn't spawn. Now, what I can do is I can crack open the World Items Manager here. And we can look at the function that actually spawns things. Okay. World item category searching, so load, save, initialize, stack items, world items. Okay. It'll be in this region, right? Unload. No, let's just destroy. Clone. Here we go. Okay, so we have all these clone functions, and this is what we use, all these overloaded functions, to get world items out of the manager and into the world. So, the console world items get stack item from pack. Okay. Oh god, I see a temp in here. Why would that be temp? all this does is it looks at the pack and then the prefab by name and returns a stack item. This isn't temp, this is fine. You didn't see that either. I never leave temp in places where it's not meant to be. I would never. So this returns false if anything goes wrong. And if anything goes really wrong, I mean, it's just going to show me an error. And maybe I have a property set wrong in the world item itself. No, because it generates the templates on startup. That was the Leviathan you just heard, by the way. I don't know. Are you guys picking up? You're picking up the desktop audio. Yeah, okay. So I'll just verify here. I mean, I know we have already, but I'll just verify that it is in fact in our pack. Gaussian crystal detonator, there you are. Yep. You're there, you're there. Is template is checked. That's one thing that goes wrong occasionally. Every world item in this list, the prefabs, has to be labeled as a template and not as an actual world item that's in the world. So that's fine. Properties looks fine. I sense a rant incoming here. I sense a rant incoming where I rage at length about the complexity of this game and advise everyone watching to not make such a complex game, especially not if it's your first project, because this is what you deal with day after day after day. Now, why is use rigid body set to false? That doesn't sound right. It wasn't that long ago that I changed these properties, but already I've forgotten my motivation. I'm going to save the templates again, refresh and save the templates so that that property gets saved correctly. I'll look at this. Use rigid body as false. Okay, something's going wrong. Oh, you know what? You know what? It's saying don't use a rigid body because it didn't find a rigid body. That makes sense. Makes sense. I didn't have a rigid body attached to my world item. Oh, so foolish. You need a rigid body or it's not going to be able to like bounce around and do its thing. I'm not positive that explains why it wasn't spawning. It should have spawned and created an error. But that's a pretty big problem, and I can at least expect some unpredictable behavior out of that. Okay. Use rigid body is now set to true. Do you feel better after your rants? It was just a temp comment. Oh, I'm missing a lot of stuff. Isn't there a flag or something that needs to be set to make something pick upable? There is, and I'll check it right now just to make sure. There are a lot of things that have to go. There are a lot of things that can go wrong that make an object not pick upable. On a world item this simple without many scripts, the only thing you really have to do right is set the size to less than huge. If it's huge, there's no container that can hold it except for a no limit container. It's set to small, so that should be fine. Yep, yep. Okay, I think we're good. By the way, Jay, your guesses are never far off. Like, I don't think you've been right once, but you've never been wrong, if that makes sense. Everything you suggest has always made an amount of sense. Um, yeah, sometimes I feel better after my rants. Not all the time, though. And they're very repetitive. You can only say the same thing in different ways so many times. TLDR, simple. Keep it simple. Felt tip circus is very simple. Every time I want to make a change to that, it's no problem. No problem. Every time there's a problem, it doesn't take long to diagnose what it is. You know, I don't have to go through like this labyrinthine path of ins and outs and, you know, this manager and that manager. None of that crap. None of it. I just watched a fantastic rant, by the way, on the subject of object-oriented programming. Boy, it's almost worth pasting it into the stream. I got that the missions bug wasn't in mission, but in conversations. But other than that, nope. That's true. You were right about that. I have to give you that credit for that. Come on. I just posted it. It was really good. Oh, whatever. It was a fantastic video that described all the problems I have with object-oriented programming in great clarity. It was really, really good. Explaining all the ways that it can go wrong, explaining all the ways that it creates inefficiencies. And if there's one thing I can't stand about you know, accepted practices, or if there's one thing I can't stand about any kind of methodology, it's if it's too idealistic, and if it expects, if in order for it to be useful, you are expected to do things that one never does in practice, because then you'll never do those things, and the technique becomes useless. It drives me crazy when people stick to a principle and say, well, if only people would stick to these other principles that, you know, trail along behind it like cans on strings, everything would be fine. I hate that. I hate that attitude. And this video did a really, really good job of breaking down all the different things about object-oriented programming that you are expected to do, but in fact never do, which lead to the whole paradigm being kind of a waste of time. Okay, we are adding that. There was my rant. There you go. Quest items. Gauze. Okay. Yeah, Gazgin. So, see, right now I'm searching for it. These are all the things in the world that are named Gazgin. Oh. Okay, these are our fuses that are acting up. It's got nothing to do with the detonator. Okay, it's saying that it... All right. It's adding the item. The error must be happening here then. If it's if it's getting the item and we're not seeing this debug log, which we would if it wasn't getting the item, then it must be failing on add to player inventory. So we're going to undo some of these debug logs. If item is quest item. Da, 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 da. Okay, so when you add something to inventory, you perform a dozen little checks. You check to make sure the item is null. You check whether the inventory was initialized. That's probably not the case, but like I'm pretty sure we're initialized. But just in case. We check if the quick slots are locked. Also probably not the case, but whatever. We check if the item is not stackable. That's plausible. When an item is stackable, it means that it can be placed into a stack. Oh my God, our item isn't stackable. What have I done? Oh no, our item isn't stackable. Okay, stackable is a world item script that defines how a world item is supposed to look in a stack and stuff like this. Now, I duplicated Kara's note as a starting point because Kara's note was simple and lightweight, and I knew that. But the thing is, Kara's note isn't stackable. It appears in the world on a door. Oh man, stackable, see, is a script that you need to have in order to appear in your inventory. Duh. I just didn't even think about it because, yeah, I didn't even think about it. Okay, so these things are going to be funky. These properties, square scale, square offset, square rotation. What that means is when it appears in a square in inventory, how big is it supposed to be and what rotation and position is it supposed to appear in? It's going to appear tiny in the inventory square for now with these default settings, but that's okay. Now, is there anything else that you need to be in order to enter inventory? I don't think so. If we want to be able to hold it, we need to be equipable. Equipable. See, this world item script defines the properties that you need to have in order to, hold it in front of you. You have your equip offset and rotation. If we want to be able to, oh man. Whew. Okay, if you want to be able to click on it to use it, you need to specify its type of equipable as generic usable. Okay, we're not going to force equip. We're going to use a doppelganger. We're going to display as a tool in front of you. We don't require a handling skill. We don't have any special effects or states or sounds. That's fine. That's fine. It's fine. Oh boy. Okay. Now, is there anything else? We don't need to make it damageable. I suppose I should say that it's a quest item. Just to be complete here. Just defining a quest item name is enough. But if we want to be nice and complete, we're going to add the quest item script, which adds a few more abilities for searching and things. Okay, visible and startup visible now. Unlock visibility and added to player inventory. Can be dropped. Can be placed. Okay, so that's good. And that'll also add that little turquoise color to the square in inventory, so you kind of know that you're not supposed to drop it. Okay. Can't add non-stackable items, dummy. I have to see this for myself. Well, you can't. You can't. If it's not stackable, how are you going to stack it? Jeez. What a moron. Okay. So now we've added everything we need in order to actually do stuff with this thing. We're going to refresh the World Items Manager. And we're going to save our templates. Whew. And while we're at it, I'll just turn on these debugs. Yes. Just in case that still didn't fix the problem. Ugh. Okay, and while that recompiles, I'm going to take a quick break and refill my juice glass. I will see you in a moment.